I'm going to start once again with my very first step when I have to name a graph will always be to find the middle horizontally of the graph, exactly halfway between the highest and the lowest points. Again, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start to put together the equation by naming that midline. The middle of this graph landed at -2, so I'm going to have something, 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 -2 as my equation. That -2 becomes my midline. Once I've got that midline, step 2 is going to be to decide, based on this fake origin, the place where your midline hits the y-axis, whether my graph is sine or cosine. And this one is a cosine graph. If you didn't read the directions, I told you these were both cosines. So this is a cosine graph. Next, I can go ahead and put the word cosine in here. Once again, I'll leave it a little space before the word cosine to deal with the amplitude, and leaving a little space after the word cosine to deal with the frequency. My third step in naming a graph is always going to be to calculate the amplitude, and that amplitude is always going to have two parts. Part 1 is the number value, and that comes from calculating the highest point down to the midline. In this case, that value is a 3. Part 2 is basically just deciding whether the graph is upside down or right side up. For a cosine graph, that's a smile is positive, a frown is negative. This one is positive, and I do want to see that positive. Once again, it tells me you're not just hitting a 50-50 chance, but you did indeed give it a thought. Last but not least, and the hardest part of naming the graph, is finding the frequency. This time I'm going to have this value, even though it doesn't count out perfectly, be a value of 10. And once again, I'm going to make a proportion that will always read 2 pi is to b is always the first part of your proportion. My width is to how many graphs I see is the second part of that proportion. I went with a width of 10, and in that width I'm seeing one full graph. When I name that horizontal axis with a width of 10, then I end up getting that 2 pi is 10b, or pi over 5 is b. So I put pi over 5 theta in as my equation, and then I go to my grapher and I check it. To check this thing, you're going to want to set your x's to go from 0 to 10. You're going to want to set your y's to go from -8 to +3. So everybody see where I'm getting these numbers from? And then you're going to want to type this equation into your grapher, and we're going to use window first, 0 to 10. -8 to +3. And I'm doing this from memory here, so help me out. I think we said that this was a 3 cos of pi over 5x minus 2. I'm not sure on the -2. Do you recall? Mm-hmm. Yes? Except that I didn't hit pi over 5. Somehow I hit list 5. I think I got it now. All right, let's try it. Did I not -2? Oh, I still have +3. That's why. Okay. There it is. Does that look like what we have on the paper? You ready to try one?
Yeah.
Find some board space, please.